Hey YouTube, it's David from mdbootstrap.com. In this video, we're gonna learn how to create fully working newsletter using PHP and MySQL. So we're gonna create subscription form, so anyone could subscribe to your newsletter, unsubscribe form, which allows people to unsubscribe if they don't want to receive it anymore. And we're also gonna create a form which allows us to create and send a newsletter to all emails in our database. So without further ado, let's get started. So as I mentioned before, we're gonna use PHP and MySQL. So I'm using XAMPP, I'm working on Windows. So if you want, you can use the same. You can obviously use other servers, but I have a feeling that XAMPP is the easiest way to start. So if you navigate to XAMPP homepage, you're gonna find installable for all other operating systems like Windows, Linux, and OS X. So simply, if you don't have it, simply pause video, download, install it, and once you install it, you should see something like this. Obviously, this may look different depending on the version, depending on operating system, but basically you should have option to start your Apache and MySQL server. Now, if you're using XAMPP, then your project is gonna be stored at htdocs. In my case, this is XAMPP htdocs folder. So this is our root folder, and this is where I created newsletter folder here, and I just open it in Visual Studio Code. So we don't have any files yet. We're gonna create everything from scratch. This is first part, right? So we have our PHP server. Now, in order to access this page, let's do it. Let's create index PHP file, and let's say echo hello world, so you could see how does it work. And now we need to navigate to local host slash newsletter. A newsletter, this is my folder name, slash we could type index.php, but this will also pick it up automatically if we don't provide the file name. So this is our PHP part. It's working fine, as you can see. Again, newsletter is because we have this folder under htdocs called newsletter. Now let's move to database. So XAMPP comes with MySQL database. If you want to check panel, you need to go to localhost slash phpMyAdmin, and this is where you're gonna see your administrative panel for databases, different databases here. Now within this video, I'm going to show you how to create database using UI, this interface, as well as using SQL command, but this is going to be the second part of this tutorial. So let's create database for our project. I'm going to create basically you need both. You need user and the database. Obviously, you could use admin user, right? This is something which, this is the user which has access to all the databases, but in the real projects, basically, you want to keep control of access, so you don't want one or single user to have access to all the databases. So what you usually do, you want to create a new user, and using phpMyAdmin, if you click add user account, and specify something like, let's call it news. We want this database be available at localhost, so we'll be working only within our environment. I'm going to show you how to deploy this to production at the end of this video. And let's create some password. I'm going to use secret.1. Not sure if I can make it visible. Secret.1. So I'm using secret.1. This is going to be our password. Okay, and why I'm starting with user is because phpMyAdmin allows me to create database automatically. So if I click this checkboxes database for the user account, so it's going to create exactly the same database with the same name. So we're going to have a username news and database news. Now I'm going to grant all privileges, all grants to my news user. So this user will be capable of doing everything on this table, and simply click go. So this is SQL which has been executed right now. Okay, and If we click on the news table, we're gonna see that there are no news database. We're gonna see that there are no tables here, and we're gonna create a table very soon. But now let's get back to our code for a second. So let's start with structuring our project. So we're gonna need a bunch of files, and let's create them now. So let's assume that index.php is gonna be our main file, and that's gonna be our subscription form, right? So once we visit this page, we're gonna see the form which allows us to subscribe to our newsletter. Now, once we submit that form, we want to call another file, which is gonna be called something like subscribe PHP. So this is gonna be action. So we have this one for subscription. Now let's have something like out PHP. So this is for unsubscribing. So out is gonna have our form, and we're gonna have unsubscribe.php. So this is gonna be our action. And finally, let's have something like compose PHP and action send PHP. If you don't get it, don't worry. We're gonna get there in a second. So let's start with our HTML. So let me quickly create form. So let's say we're gonna have some h1 stating sign for or sign up for a newsletter or my newsletter. Okay, and now we're gonna have form, and now our action gonna be subscribe PHP. So whatever we submit within this form is gonna be sent to our subscribe PHP file, where we're gonna handle connection and communication within our database. So within subscribe PHP, we're gonna add this data to our database. So let's have something like label. This is gonna be for the first name, and we're gonna have input here. Input. It's text, okay, and this is first name. Unfortunately, we don't have live server here, so it doesn't refresh automatically. Okay, let's do it like this, and we want to give a name. This is important. We want to have first name on this field, and you're gonna see why very soon. Okay, so this is first name, second name, and email. So there's gonna be second name, and we want to have an email here. Okay. Okay, let's do it ugly way. So I'm just gonna type, I'm gonna use new line. Okay, and we need finally our submit form. Oops. So input type submit. Now let's add name as well and value. Let's call it subscribe. Okay. Now it's not the most beautiful form you've ever seen, but I don't want to waste time on HTML. If you want to learn more about contact forms and styling them, check our previous videos where you're gonna find more on contact forms. For now, it's working, it's doing the job. Let's move to subscribe PHP. So this is our file, which is gonna be called once we gonna submit this file, right? So as soon as we click this file, it's gonna go to subscribe PHP, and as you can see, it's sending this data, which are empty, by the way, right? Let me show you this. A, B, C, subscribe. So it's sending this data like this. So this is sending them via get method. And we actually want to use post. So I'm gonna change method to post. Again, if you don't understand what's the difference between get and post, don't worry, you can still continue this tutorial. But I strongly encourage you to check our previous videos on PHP, where you're gonna find more differences. Actually not on PHP, but on web development itself. We have a tutorial for this one, which explains you a difference between post and get. So check our other videos or description down below. Now we have a post method. So now if I refresh this page and I'm gonna do A, B, C and click subscribe, we're not gonna see these values here anymore, but they are still being sent. And let me see if I can see it here. Let me refresh the page. And I want to see all. So we have the subscribe PHP. And if we open Web Developer Tools, if we navigate to Network, check all, refresh the page, you're gonna see this subscribe PHP. So this file when it's being loaded, and in the headers you're gonna see our form data which we sent, right? So this entire form has been just sent behind the scene, right? So you can't see the values anymore in the URL. Okay, now how can we get this data? So in order to see the data, we can do something like this: print _r and $post. So this is the variable. And now let's refresh the page. And as you can see, we have this array here. So we are having our first name, second name, email, and submit. Okay, right. So now how can we access this? That's fairly easy. Let's create a variable. Let's call it first name, and let's assign a post. And we want our first name from this object, right? So we want this 3 times. This is a second name. Oh, actually, why I'm calling this second? It's last, obviously, right? Last name, and I think I need to fix this one, last name. Why did I call it second? Okay, not compose. Subscribe. So we have a last name and we have email. We want to have our email here as well. And now let's do echo, and let's have first name, some space, second. Why I'm keep on using this second instead of last, I don't know. Okay, and email. And let's get rid of this one for now. Let's refresh. And we are getting error here. And we are missing dot here. By the way, dot is concatenation in PHP. Okay, so we have A and C, last name. Oh, okay, we need to refresh our form because we changed this to the last name. So now A, B, C, and now we have A, B, C. Okay, so that's how you access your post data. Okay, now let's jump back to our database and let's create a table. So I'm gonna call this table newsletter, or actually, you know what, let's call it subscribers, because that's what this table is about. We're gonna need an ID for each row. We're gonna need name, last name, email, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, and we also want to add date, so we could easily sort all the results from the newest to latest. So we're gonna need 5 columns here. If you click go, you're gonna see this form over here, and let's fill it out. So we want to have ID, right? So this is just the number. It's gonna be integer, and what we want here is that we want this to auto increment. Once we click this, it's gonna set our index to primary. We're gonna talk more about indexes in another video dedicated to SQL. but as for now, let's just leave it as it is. We also want to have first name here, last name over here, email over here, and we want to have date over there. Now we want to change or actually adjust type. So for first name, let's use text. For last name, let's also use text. Email, same. And for the date, we want to use date, obviously. Now, we could specify length here. We're not gonna do that. We could specify collation, but this is set up globally on our database. So if you are using some specific language and with specific characters, like we have in Poland, for example, you could use the one which supports it. For now, we're just gonna use a default one. Actually, we're gonna skip most of the time, most of the options over here, though we still want to have email to be unique. So let's call it unique email. So we are creating index. Don't worry, you don't need to understand now fully how indexes works. Just for your understanding, we want each and every email to be unique. And if we use this option, then if we try to insert something into database, it's gonna fail, and our database won't allow us to insert the same email twice. It's gonna throw an error. So that's something which we want to do. And other than that, we want to also add this null here, and this is because by default all the fields are not null, which means that we should always provide some data into it, right? So we should always have ID and the first name, last name, and so on. So as far as ID and the date and the email are concerned, because we're gonna require our user to provide an email. Obviously, some people may don't want to leave their first and especially a second, last. Why I'm talking second, especially a last name. So we want to make this optional. So this is this allows us to have this option, this fields and empty fields. So yeah, that's how it is. Okay, let's now click save, and it's gonna create a table for us. And for collation, as you can see, we are using general CI UTF, which should be fine. Okay, our table is ready, so it's a high time to connect to it from SQL. How are we gonna do that? Since we're gonna connect to our database every time whenever someone subscribe, unsubscribe, or we are sending our newsletter, let's create a separate file where we're gonna store a configuration for our connection to database. So I'm gonna call it connection.inc.php. Now, what this inc means, actually, that doesn't mean anything. This is just kind of syntax which I like to use. So inc stands for include, which means that this, well, which doesn't mean, it kind of suggests to you that this file shouldn't be used standalone. So, you know, as far as all the other files are concerned, we can just directly access them and do something on them. However, this file should be included in other files. So this is just small tip for me, for other developers, that this file is being included somewhere else. So let's open PHP tag here, and now let's have a bunch of variables. So I want to have user, and this user was news, right? Then I want to have a password, which was secret.1. I want to also have host of our database, which in our case is gonna be localhost. We're gonna change it when we deploy to some server. I want to have database, let's call it dbase, and the database was also called news, so it had the same name as username. Keep in mind that it's not always true. Sometimes you have one database and multiple users, different users, so this is not always the same. And we want to have a table name, and we called our table subscribers, but you know, it's always good practice to have it to store it somewhere in a variable. Actually, we could even use constant for this one, but for the sake of simplicity, let's just do it like this. And the reason behind this is that if in the future you want to rename or use some other table, obviously you won't have to change this in multiple places. You just change this single variable, and then they will all get updated. Now, what we want to do, we want to update to database. So we're gonna do something like this: dbc, this is our variable, and we're gonna use mysqli underscore connect. And this function will connect to the database using our host, our user, our password, and database. Right, so maybe one word of explanation here. Pardon my interruptions for a moment. I just wanted to let you know that besides this video, we also released a lot of different tutorials. Especially you should check our Bootstrap 5 crash course, which we released recently. If you want to watch this video, you're gonna find the link somewhere over here or in the description down below. This is a perfect tutorial for the people who haven't used Bootstrap 5 or Bootstrap at all in the past, as well as for those who've been using Bootstrap for some previous projects and would like to know what has changed. And believe me, a lot has changed in newest Bootstrap 5. This video and this tutorial obviously is completely free for everyone. It's available on the YouTube, and if you would like to support us to help us creating more tutorials and materials like this video and the Bootstrap 5 course, you should also try our MDB UI kit, which is available also for free as an open source. You're gonna find a link to this project down below, so give a try and I'm sure you're gonna love it. As you can see here, this might be a little bit confusing because I have single instance of my database. So this my PHP admin is like there's one instance of this one, and this is a server, right? And on the server we have different databases over here, right? So we kind of use our database for the entire server, entire installation, as well for different databases. So host is specifying this whole server, right? So it's gonna use an IP address. Usually you will have some IP address here. You could use 127.0.0.1 or in our local host, and the database is one of those, right? So you can have on the single server, you can have a different database for different users, different customers, and so on. Okay, so we try to connect to our database or die if something goes wrong and say unable to select database, let's see, or unable to connect actually. Okay, or die. And for now, let's test whether our connection works fine. So we're gonna get back to our index.php and not index, to subscribe PHP, and we're gonna add require once, as we want this file only once, connection in PHP. So this, what it's gonna do is gonna open this file and put the entire content of this file over here. And since it's require, we could also use include. The difference between include and require is that when include fails, the rest of the PHP will still try to execute, and in case of require, it's gonna fail. And this is what we want to do, because if we are not able to connect to the database, there is no point if trying to do something else. So we want to get error. Okay, let's refresh this one. Let's get back to our subscribe PHP. Let's refresh. Now, every time I'm refreshing this page, it's sending over the same post data. So let's refresh, and it seems it's working because we didn't get any error. Okay, now since we don't have any error, let's try to add new email to our database. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna first type a query. So we're gonna have a query and we're gonna write a SQL statement. So insert into table. So our table name. Now we want to insert first name, last name, and email and date. Okay, now we want to concatenate this one. Let me close this one for a second. And we want to concatenate this one with values. Actually, we don't need concatenation. We can do it like this, values. And now we are using our variables. Last name, email. And now, as for date, we need to provide the date in a specific format. So I'm gonna do something like this. I'm gonna create a variable date equals date, and it's, so this is format which our database likes. Okay, let's echo this to make sure it's working fine. Let's comment this out for a second. Let's refresh. And yes, we have our current date. Okay, and so let's get rid of this one. Let me wrap this line, and we now can pass this date as well. So what is going on here is that we are passing some of the variables. So you can see we are passing first name, last name, email, and date. And as you might remember, we also have ID over here, but since it's auto increment, it's gonna add automatically value itself, and it's gonna increment this one with every new row which we're gonna add. So this is one way to do it, and obviously you could also pass a specific ID, but then we would have to make sure that this is unique. Since this is the primary key, it has to be unique. So we just want to leave it to database, so it's gonna just auto increment this ID on our behalf. Okay, we have our query ready, so now let's execute this query, and we're gonna use MySQLi underscore query, and we want do this query on dbc. So dbc, to remind you, it's our connection here, dbc, and we want to execute this query. Okay, and again, or die. So if something doesn't work, we want kill our connection and say error inserting email. And you know what, let's add MySQLi error dbc. So if something doesn't work, we want to get this error. And let's change this echo to something like you have been successfully added. Successfully, and yeah, okay, let's check whether it's working fine. You have been successfully added. Great. So let's check our database. Let's refresh this one, and we have subscribers, browse, and we have our AABBC. Okay, now obviously in the real life scenario, we would add some validation to this email. We don't want to have something like CCC, but this is not the core of this tutorial. We have another tutorial on contact forms, so I strongly encourage you to check this one, where you're gonna find how to apply validation both on the front-end side in JavaScript as well as on the backend side, so in PHP, just to make sure that someone won't cheat. So we have our email added. Now if I refresh it, I'm gonna get this error, duplicate entry CCC for key unique email. So this is error from database, right? So this is working as expected. If I refresh the page, we don't have two rows here, and this is exactly what we wanted. But now Obviously, when someone subscribes twice, we don't want to have this error like this. What we want to do, what we can do, actually, we can proactively check whether this user is already subscribed. There are many ways we can handle this, but I want to just show you how, except for inserting data to the database, you can also select data from it. So let's go up here and let's type query. Let's use select. So select email from table where email equals to our email. So whenever user pass this email, we're gonna go to database and check whether there is any entry for this email already in our database. So what we want to have, we want to result equals, and now dbc query. Okay, it looks odd. This is function, this is our variable name. Don't to mess up. Obviously we could change this query to anything else. This could be something like I don't know, Q, and that would work, right? So now you can see the difference between query and Q. And what is important now is that we don't even have to actually browse through this data which we get from database, right? Because what we are interested in is if in results number of rows returned is greater than 0, right? What does it mean? So if this number, so we have at least one row for this email, that means that this is already in our database, right? So in that case, we want to do something like echo, and this email has been already subscribed. And here we can say something like, I don't know, if you didn't receive our newsletter yet, check spam folder, or make sure to add this and that email to your whitelist or whatsoever, right? So we can handle nicely this error to our users. And else, so if there are no rows for a given email, then only we want to do it like this. So then only we will add this email to our database. So let's test it now. Oh, we get error line 16. Okay, missing. And now you can see we have this nice error. This email has been already subscribed, so we are handling this very nicely. Just for information, this select statement, I'm selecting here just an email, right? So I could select any column I want. I could select specific columns I want, so I could get, you know, like first name and email, and I could just say something like, hey Joe, hey David, whatever, your email, and then show to the user his email has been already subscribed, so check your spam folder or something like that. And now obviously in our case, because email is unique, we're gonna have only at most one row, right? So we can have only one row for an email. But obviously in other cases, in our tables, you could have different queries. So you could, for example, get all rows where username or where first name is David, right? So you could get email of all Davids in your database. So then you would have more results than only one. Okay, so we nicely handled this subscription part. Let's double check. So I'm gonna change now my email to DDD, and now you have been successfully added. If I get back and try to resubscribe, I'm gonna get this error. The email has been already subscribed. When I refresh database, I'm having my emails over here. So now let's move to the unsubscribe. So I called this file out.php, and let's do something like this. So we have h1, please enter the email for which you want to unsubscribe. Okay, and let's create some form. Action gonna be unsubscribe PHP, and within our form we're gonna have a label for email, and then we're gonna have input. No, it's email, and then we're gonna have input with name email, and we want to have a submit button as well. Input submit value on unsubscribe. Oh, and let's check this one out. PHP, please enter the email for which you want to unsubscribe email. Okay, so now this we're gonna call unsubscribe PHP. So let's jump into this one. Actually, we can copy this part. We don't need this one, so we will have connection. Oh, by the way, one thing I forgot is that we should close our connection to database once we are done. So MySQL close and DB connection. So once we are done working with database, we want to close connection to don't have a stale connection to our database. Let's get back. Oh, actually, let's get this one, and we're gonna need this anyway at the end of this file. So we have our email, and now we want to run another query. So this query gonna looks like this: delete from our table name where email equals email. Right, so it's pretty much same as we did with our select query, and now we want to check our result equals to MySQL in query, and now we're gonna use dbc and our query again, or obviously die, saying error, removing email from database, and we want to have this MySQL error for dbc connection, and let's test it out. So our email is c undefined index email. Okie dokie. Online form email. How did we call it? Email. Input type text name email. Let's try again. Nope. Okay, let's open inspector network unsubscribe. Obviously it's not sending as a post, it's sending as a get. So we need to change this method to post. And now refresh our form. CCC. Whoops. Okay, it seems it worked. Yeah, it removed, but we didn't provide any confirmation. So now let's do one more thing. Let's do print our result. So we're gonna see what result shows us. Let's refresh this one. So now it's 1. Okay, and let's remove this one. It's 1. Okay, so if our query was run successfully, then we're gonna get 1. So we can say that if result, then if, then we want echo you have been successfully unsubscribed. My spelling today isn't the best part. Okie dokie. Right. So now you may wonder why, even though there is no email anymore, we are still getting this one, and the reason is because this query delete from is basically, well, successful, even though it doesn't return anything. So it's not giving us the number of rows which has been deleted. But one way or another, at the end of the day, the result is the same because this email is not there in the database anymore. Okay. And if in case of error, we would have this result set to something else than 1, and obviously we would see this error over here. But the point here is that we are checking because we don't want to have this error here, or actually, no, this is gonna die. So yeah, we don't need this if statement here, because if we're gonna die in PHP, then we're gonna stop execution. So we can actually do it like that, and this will also gonna work. So to show you that, let's gonna make a typo here in our SQL statement, and as you can see, we are getting this error, and this echo, it's not executed anymore. So we don't need to worry that this is gonna show to the user, right? Because otherwise we could have possibly a situation where we have some error here, but we still print you have been successfully unsubscribed, which is not true, obviously. But since we have die over here, this is not required. Okay, let's fix it, and let's move to the last part, which is compose PHP. So what we want to do, we want to compose a message to all of our newsletter subscribers. And one disclaimer is that it's not gonna work on the local host because we need SMTP server, so the mailing server, to send this email. But once we're gonna deploy this to some server which has SMTP support, and I'm gonna show you how to do it at the end of this video, this is gonna work. But let's do the basics first. So we have a form, action is gonna be send PHP, so this is gonna send all the emails, and don't forget to change method to post. And now let's have something like label for subject. So we're gonna have some subject of our email, and we want to have subject, and we want to have input called type text, name subject, okay, we have subject of our email, and we want to have label body, and we're gonna use let's say body of the email here, and we're gonna use text area here, text area. So name is body, ID is we don't need ID here for now. Let's have something like this. Let's add new line here. Okay, and obviously we need a submit button. So let's have input type submit, and then we want to have value sent. Okay, let's get this to new line as well. Okie dokie, and well, I shouldn't take care of styling, but let's have it like this. Okay, now let's move to send PHP, right? So this is where we're gonna send all our emails. What we're gonna do here, we're gonna have this require once, which I'm gonna copy from here. And now we want to get subject from our post, and we want to have body same way. Okay, so now we have subject and body of our email. Now, while sending an emails, we want to set some headers. This is more for SMTP. Let's not go much into details, just use same as I'm using. So these are basically metadata which are required for an email. They are not necessarily, they are not mandatory. They're really helpful, but since we are sending a mail from, some server, probably some custom server, the more data you provide, the less possibility that you're going to be treated as a spam, because you can imagine, right, that everyone can buy any server here, and it's fairly easy to write some loop in PHP, which we're going to do, by the way, and send 1,000 of emails to random email addresses. So this is very easy to send a lot of spam. So that's why servers, they don't like this way. They are by default blocking it. So you should provide this data, or you should use SMTP. So for example, you should use I don't know, your Gmail account, right? So if you have Gmail account or any other email account, you can get access to your SMTP server. So basically our PHP code capable of sending email on your behalf. So although we are sending them from PHP, they would be sent via your Gmail account, but then you have limits like 400 emails a day from Gmail. So there are pros and cons. You could use servers like Mailgun, but that's not the subject of this tutorial. I'm just giving you to know that there are this kind of possibilities, right? So then you just use third-party services to send, and they are taking care and making sure that your messages are getting delivered. For now, we're gonna use the very basic SMTP configuration, just to make sure, just to show you how it works, and and you should try this on your server and verify whether it works or not. So we have from, so this is gonna be obviously where our from address. Now it's headers. Now let's add to that reply to. So whenever someone hits reply button, this gonna put this email address in to field, your domain com, and new line character. Okay, well, this should be equals. Now we also gonna have let me copy paste them as you're gonna find the source code of this in the repository in the description down below, so you can simply copy that. So this is car set, right? So this is the coding, and yeah, that's just making sure that all the characters are displayed properly. Now let's create another query. Okay, so now you will see another example. So we're gonna have select star from table. So we want to get everything from our table, and our result equals MySQL I query dbc query. So all you know already, or obviously die error querying database my error dbc. So if something doesn't work, we want to know what doesn't work. And now while our row equals to MySQL fetch array result, we want our first name to equals row first name. So what we are doing now, we are getting this data back from our table, our database, and we are assigning them to variables on row, last name, and email equals row. Okie dokie. Now once we have everything, let's compose the message. So message gonna be let's say dear first name, last name, new line, and then body. So this is our email, content of our email. And now what we want to do, we want to do mail, and we want to pass email, subject, message, and headers. Okay, and then we want to do echo email sent to email and new line. Okay, now we need to add some emails. So let's have a domain.com, subscribe, B and C. Now let's check if we have them. Right, we have we have DDD still here. Let's get rid of it. Now we have the subscribers A, B, C. Now let's move to compose PHP. So subject of the let's say catchy subject and some message. Now let's hit send, and it's waiting. We're gonna get an error, or actually a bunch of errors. So let's say undefined index, line number 4, subject. Why we don't have subject compose? Okay, because we have space here. And why do we have space here? Okay, because we messed up this parameters, so now they are fine. And then undefined variable line 21, message first name, last name. Okay, that's fixed. Let's refresh it. Index line 4. Oh, again, I didn't. We need to send it again because I didn't refresh my HTML, so this error was still there. And let's send it. So now we should get errors, but only one related to SMTP. Right. See, so you can see that we are trying to send this mail to SMTP, but I don't have SMTP server on my local machine, right? So this is why it doesn't work yet, and we're gonna check soon how we can deploy this to a server and verify on the server with SMTP whether it's working or not. But before we deploy to a server, let's also do a small fix here. So instead of failing like this, we can do we can handle this exception. So we can say if we succeed to send this email, then we want to echo this, and otherwise we want to echo error while sending an email to and email. So now we should fail nice. Oh, well, actually it's not really nicely, but at least we are not sending a confusing messages, right? So although before we had this warning and error here, and we still had this send to, and now we have this error. So we know that this email wasn't sent, and this is because mail returns 1 when it's successful, when it successfully deliver an email. Now, as I mentioned to you at the very beginning, we're also going to learn how to create tables from our code, because we don't always have access to the user interface like this one. So we're going to learn how to do it from SQL. So let's do it now. Let's get back to our connection INC, and let's do something like that. So we're gonna connect our database, and let's create a query, and now obviously we can type this query by ourselves, but you can also, what you can also do, you can help yourself if you're not familiar with SQL statements. What you can do something like this. So we're gonna create a new table. Let's create new one. We need 1, 2, 3, 4. We need 5 columns, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm just basically gonna recreate the same table which we had here. I'm gonna put whatever name here, that doesn't matter, and just quickly recreate what we just did. So we have ID, first name, last name, email, and a date. Then we was integer, text, and date. This was auto increment. This was unique. It was unique email, as far as I can remember. And this was not null. And now, instead of hitting save, we can just hit preview SQL. So that's gonna generate an SQL for us. So I'm gonna just copy this one, and I'm gonna paste it here. And now let's just do some small adjustment here. So first of all, we want to add something like this: create table if not exists. So every time we call this file connection, this will go here. And obviously we don't want to create this table every time. We want to create this table only once. So that's why you can use this create table if not exists. Now, instead of hard coding the name, let's use our variable. That's what is it for? And yeah, I think basically that should work. And now let's do result equals MySQLi query dbc query or die, and die with the error creating table MySQL error dbc. Okay. By the way, we should close connection. We can't close connection here. So what we have to do, we have to make sure that we are closing connection in everywhere. So we have unsubscribe, subscribe, and send. Oh, we didn't close it here, just to make sure that the connections are maintained. And now, well, let's test it. So I'm going back to connection.inc, and I'm going to remove my table from here. So let's get to my news table and let's drop it. So now we have no tables here, and let's go to, let's say, index A, B, C, and let's check whether it was trying to get property no rows object, and I'm 14. in subscribe PHP. Okay, I've got the error here because we need to use double quotes, as otherwise this didn't work. So let's try to do it again. And now you have been successfully added. So if we refresh it, we're gonna see that we have our subscribers here and we have this table over here. So you can see that instead of using variable before, because we had only single quotes, it didn't treat this one as variable. It just treated it as a string. So it created the table with the name table. So obviously we can drop this table as we don't need this anymore. And again, since it already exists, it's not gonna run again. So actually it's gonna run, but it's gonna check create table if not exist. So it's gonna try to create, but first it's gonna check whether it exists or not. If it does, then it's gonna just skip this part. So now let's move to deployment. What we're gonna do, we're gonna use MDB Go for that. So MDB Go, it's a platform where you can easily deploy your project. You can easily create a database. So let me show you how to do that. Just if you don't have MDB Go, you can easily install it by typing npm. Obviously, you have to have npm installed. If you don't know how to do it, we have a dedicated video for this one. Now let me just quickly show you that you can do npm install -g mymdb CLI. So this is the tool which you're gonna use. It's gonna install our CLI globally. Now let's do mdb login. You can use same username and password which you use on either mdbgo.com or mdbootstrap.com. If you don't have account, just create one because it's totally free, so you can use it. You can also do mdb register. That's also an option. So instead of login, you could do register from your command line. I already have account, so let me just quickly log in. Okay, so I'm logged. Oops, mdb login. I messed up my password. Okay, this is my username. And now I'm successfully logged in. And actually, the only thing we have to do now is we have to do something like this. MDB backend, because this is our backend project using PHP. If that was front end like HTML, just JavaScript and CSS, we could just do MDB publish. But since we are using backend, we have to do MDB backend publish because we want to specify a platform which we want to use, and we want to use PHP 7.4, so the newest one at the moment. And let's quickly do it. This is a new project, right? We created a new folder, so it's gonna ask us whether we want to create npm project. Yes, I would like to have this one. Package name, by default is taking the folder name. Newsletter, I think it's a nice name for this one. I'm gonna accept all the default values, and now it's deploying, and you can see how easy and quick it is. And our project just got deployed under this URL. So if you navigate here, you're gonna see that we have our form ready. Now, obviously, it's not gonna work because we have provided this data, which is our database, right? So this is the database on my local machine. So we'll have to update it. Let me just show you that it doesn't work, right? So it doesn't connect. So now we need to create a new database. You can create a database either from command line or UI. I showed you the command line already for the project. So let me show you now this option, how to create database from here. So just log in, go to databases, create a new database. Yeah, so we need to create a username first. So let's create username newsletter. Password's gonna be secret.1. Same here. I want to use MySQL. We also have Mongo, but we're gonna use MySQL database and database for newsletter. Okie dokie. So now what we have here, we are getting connection string to our database. What is important here is that you need to remember your password. Obviously, as you won't be able to preview it, so this is the last time you can see it here. And once you click close, you're not gonna see this one. Obviously, if you forget your password, you can always change it. You can change it from command line. So if you do mdb database config password, it's gonna ask which database you want to change, right? So you have this here. And then you can change your password for this one if you forget, but obviously it's better not to forget. So coming back to our database, here are our credentials. So we have our database name, we have username, obviously the password which we provided, it's not shown over here. Here is the connect strings, which you can directly use with MySQLi, or if you want to do it like we did here, with the host and everything separate, then what you need, you can either get this IP address, which you can see over here. This is IP, this is port. We are not specifying here port, so it's gonna use default. Default for MySQL is 3306, so you don't have to specify this one. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna copy this IP address, I'm gonna put it as my host. Just for your information, you can also use values like this, mysql.db, mdbgo.com, and mongodb, mdb.com. So you will be able to use this one instead of an IP address, which is just easier to remember. But since we have IP, I'm gonna use IP. Then we have a name for the database. So this is the name and this is the username. So as I told you, it doesn't always have to be the same. So as in our case, it just generated some different username and database name. Password is same, table is same. So let's save it and let's do publish again. So we need to publish our changes again. It's done. So we can get back to our project here. By the way, you can see all your projects over here. So here you have a link to your project. You can create a repository for your project as well. So you don't you can store it either on FTP like we are doing right now, or you can create easily a repository for this one. So if you go to repository, you can have options to create a Git project, so you can track your changes, which is very, very handy, or you can even give access to your project to some other people, which I strongly encourage you to do so. And by the way, the CLI allows you also to download your project if you move to a new computer, so you can download the project. But let's get back to this one. So we have AAA, and now let's put here DA, my email, and let's try to subscribe. Whoops, we don't have blob text. Oops, we get an error. Blob text column email used in a key specification without key length. What does it mean? We have a key here, unique email, and we don't have a length for this key, and apparently our database require to know how long this key can be. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna change this email text to something like varchar, and we're gonna set it's gonna be, let's say, 60 characters max. Let's publish again. Let's refresh, and now we've been successfully added. Okay, so now let's go to compose PHP, and let's have some catchy subject, some message, and voila, our email has been sent. And here we have our message from our newsletter. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments whether it was new to you and everything was clear, or if you missed something, just let me know. You're also gonna find the source code for this lesson down below in the description. Don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, as we are releasing videos as this one a few times a week. So you're gonna find new tutorials on the weekly basis. So if you don't want to miss that, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next video.